According to Feeding America, 42.2 million Americans live in a food insecure household. That's 13% of all households in the United States. This includes 29.1 million adults and 13.1 million kids. According to the IRS, the USDA spends a total of $101.9 billion a year on food assistance programs. Every year. That's a lot of money.
A way to utilize our food resources more efficiently would be to start harvesting our wild horse populations in the West to feed our food insecure households in America. By accepting the horse meat consumption in the United States, we could feed many unprivileged Americans as well as salvage or depleting grasslands.
Bill came through in 2007 and passed, and so
What exactly was that bill?
that was, I know you're going to ask me the number of it.
Well, not the number, but just the
So that
description.
was taking away horse harvest.
Okay.
So every ag industry backed keeping horse harvest except the Jockey Club, which would be the Racing Federation. And basically, we felt like they probably didn't want to be drug tested,
Yeah.
right? Because from a residue standpoint.
Because of the lack of management of the wild horse population after the bill was passed in 2007, wild horses have begun to deplete grasslands, which are a very valuable resource for other food production industries, such as cattle ranching and sheep grazing, as well as a natural habitat for native species. Horses are destructive to grasslands because of the way they graze by uprooting the grass, and eat approximately 20 to 25 pounds a day, compared to cattle that eat the same amount, but unlike horses, cattle graze on the top layer of the pasture, which doesn't destroy the grass. Cattle ranches are more sustainable because the cattle are managed and rotated in pastures, unlike the wild horses which roam freely and can overgraze.
What makes horses so destructive to the environment? A lot of our research, we've seen that they do a lot more harm to the environment and grazing lands than cows do.
Yep.
If you put them in the same numbers.
Well, I think anything in too many numbers is destructive, right? So I think managing those populations is part of the reason for the roundups. And they have shown to be fairly adaptable as far as reproductively, even though they only have one full year at most. But they still have been able to adapt to their surroundings very well. They are hindgut fermenters, right? So just like we learned in 114. So they're going to utilize forages a little bit differently, and they're not going to be able to utilize as much of the nutrients out of poor quality forage, which is really what we find on some of those western rangelands, especially the high plateaus, low rainfall areas. So they, graze slightly differently. They clip grass a little bit differently than a ruminant with a dental pad on top and just incisors on the bottom. They obviously are not getting hoof care or vaccinations or teeth floated. So you've got some issues there too. But as far as the environment, it's mostly overgrazing and the fact that they don't have that high quality long roughage. It's poor quality, and they're not ruminants, even though they can utilize forage a little bit better than we can.
So you think cattle would utilize the ground better?
Actually, I think sheep would probably utilize the ground the best, but that's probably, there's no market for that. But they're made for those high plateau, arid, low rainfall areas a lot better.
There are currently 50,000 wild horses roaming free right now, which is well above the sustainable number of 23,622. The number of horses have reached a point to where large roundups are necessary.
This map of the United States shows the overpopulation relative to the environmentally sustainable numbers. You can see that the southwestern states are extremely overpopulated, and it continues to get worse each and every year.
On average, rounding up horses and placing them in pens such like these costs the government over $50 million a year. Trying to manage these horses could cost U.S. taxpayers, such as yourself, $1.1 billion over the next 17 years.
Here we are in eastern Nevada at one of BLM's holding facilities where we have a couple horses being held. Around 45,000 horses are kept holding facilities, and this number will continue to rise with the uncontrolled population. That is because the wild horse population has been growing at a rate of 15 to 20% each year.
So our main point is kind of like trying to persuade people on why we should have these roundups and why we should maybe slaughter them or use them in other ways
Okay.
So,
So they've had auctions for them, right?
yeah,
Limited success, probably.
yeah,
I mean, I think it's very romantic to think about owning a Mustang
Yeah.
or a wild Mustang, and then probably not extremely practical, especially for a novice horse owner.
hmm
Currently, there's no horse harvest plant in the United States
yeah.
that's federally inspected, so that would be, kind of one of the challenges.
Yeah. Could you give us your opinion on that?
Oh, I absolutely think that there's a place for that.
Yeah.
It's a high quality source of protein, and most of the horses prior to 2007, and then when it was first outlawed and then trying to be brought back, that was not only a source of protein for export markets, and most of those were unwanted horses. They weren't your, pets necessarily. But they were also a huge source of high quality protein for zoos. So lions and tigers and bears.
With 42.2 million people living in food insecure households and 45,000 horses in corrals to date, this seems like an obvious waste of a high protein food resource. Rather than dumping money into them and not getting anything in return, why don't we utilize them like many other countries have and see the economical impacts it might have? Harvesting wild horses for food may not be the complete solution, but it's a start.
By reducing the population of wild horses on the grassland, this increases the production of vegetation as well as allows more space for livestock production, which has less destruction on the land and can be more intensively managed. With the amount of wild horses available right now, this could introduce upwards of 100 million pounds of meat into the market. In a horse meat market, prices of all meats will decrease due to an increase in supplies. This will allow for opportunity of lower income households to purchase more meat, as well as allow food banks or food pantries to increase the amount of meat they can purchase.
As of now, we're losing money in attempting to export these animals to Mexico and Canada. The cost to transport them to the border outweighs the revenue we get for selling these horses.
There are many economical benefits of harvesting and consuming horse meat in the United States.
By consuming the horses, we will eliminate corralling and boarding, which will save the United States over $50 million a year. That number could reach $1.1 billion in 17 years.
Oh, didn't see you there. By using the horse meat to attack the issue of food insecurity, we will decrease the yearly spending of $101.9 billion a year that goes towards food assistance programs.
With the legalization of horse meat consumption, it can introduce a whole new industry for jobs.
Horse meat can be a better alternative to eating beef. According to nutritional data, 100 grams of cooked horse meat contains 175 calories, with just 55 of those calories coming from fat.
By comparison, 100 grams of standard ground beef has 273 calories, with 164 of those coming from fat.
The protein content of horse meat is around 28 grams per 100 grams of meat, making this a very high protein food source.
Ground beef is comparable, though a little lower, with 25 grams per 100 gram serving.
But I mean, I figured like protein's protein, and in the growing population,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in America, and we still have food insecure people in America, but for the most part, we can afford to be picky. But if you're spending 75% of your income trying to feed your family, or if you can't feed your family, things change, right? Your priorities change a little bit. And so not everybody is as lucky as we are. And if we need to feed 10 billion people by 2050, protein's protein.
Yep.
Overall, horse meat can be a better alternative to consuming beef. It provides you with a lower calorie, higher protein source of food that can benefit your health in the long run.
As we conclude, the overpopulation of wild horses has more harmful effects to our environment than benefits. With the legalization of horse consumption in America, we can improve environmental standards, increase economic growth, and create a better quality of living.